Welcome to this session on Introduction to Dental Anatomy. By the end of this session, the following objectives should be met. Knowing the importance of dental anatomy, to study human dentition, to be aware of the different tooth numbering systems, to get familiar with the landmarks used in dental morphology, to understand the different means of learning dental anatomy, and finally, to master the art of basics of carving. What is dental anatomy? The branch of gross anatomy concerning with the morphology of teeth is termed as dental anatomy, or it can also be defined as the study of the morphology of teeth, their location, position, and relationships. Why is dental anatomy so important? A sound knowledge of morphology of teeth forms a strong foundation for practice of clinical dentistry. All the basic procedures such as scaling, tooth preparation for restoration, endodontics, and practice of prosthodontics requires us to learn dental anatomy. Moving on to human dentition, human beings have two sets of teeth, a deciduous set and a permanent set. The deciduous dentition, as you can see here, are smaller sized teeth. The deciduous teeth otherwise are also known as primary teeth or milk teeth. They are the first set of teeth in the growth and development of humans and many other mammals. They are 20 in number. The teeth are divided into three groups according to their form, which includes the incisor group I, the canine group C, and the molar group M. The deciduous dental formula hence is I 2 by 2, that is 2 incisors in the maxilla, 2 in the mandible, canine 1 by 1, 1 in maxilla and 1 in mandible, and 2 molars, first molar and second molar in each arch. So amounting to 10 teeth in each arch and a total of 20 in both the arches. The permanent dentition are, as you can see in this diagram, are much bigger than the deciduous teeth. They are the second set of teeth formed in mammals. In humans, there are 32 permanent teeth. The teeth are divided into 4 groups according to their form, which includes the incisor group, the canine group, premolar group, and the molar group. So the difference here is in the premolar group, which is added on, which is absent in the deciduous dentition. The permanent dental formula therefore is incisor 2 by 2, canine 1 by 1, premolars 2 by 2 and molars 3 by 3, amounting to 16 teeth in each arch. Learning nomenclature is the first step in understanding dental anatomy. Tooth numbering or shorthand system of tooth notation is necessary in clinical practice for recording data and communication. The various tooth notation systems are as follows: PAMA notation system, Universal Notation System, and the FDI system. Universal Notation System, ADA officially recommended the Universal System in 1968. In this system for the permanent dentition, the maxillary teeth are numbered through 1 to 16, beginning with the upper right third molar. The mandibular teeth are numbered through 17 to 32, beginning with the lower left third molar. The Universal System notation for primary dentition utilizes uppercase alphabets. The notations are as shown below. In the FDI system, the Federation Dentaire International System is a 2-digit system that has been adopted by WHO. In this system, the first digit indicates a quadrant and the second digit indicates a tooth within the quadrant. 1 to 4 and 5 to 8 as a first digit indicates permanent and primary dentition respectively. 1 to 8 and 1 to 5 as a second digit indicates permanent and primary teeth respectively. The date for the primary dentition in 1874. The symbolic system is now commonly referred to as the PAMA notation system or Zsigmondy system. The notations are shown in the picture. In the example given in the picture here the mandibular right permanent first molar is designated as 3-0 universal system, 6 in the lower right quadrant, wherein the quadrant is represented diagrammatically, and as 4-6 in FDI system. Now the teeth have been embedded within the sockets present within upper and lower jaw. The upper jaw is called as maxilla and the lower jaw the mandible. Moving on to the landmarks, all the teeth in the oral cavity have been divided into crown and root. Crown is covered by the enamel and referred to as the anatomical crown. The roots are embedded within the sockets and are covered by cementum. The exposed part of the crown in the oral cavity is termed as a clinical crown as shown diagrammatically. The clinical crown band can be smaller or longer than the anatomical crown depending on how much of the tooth is exposed in the oral cavity. For example, in the slide shown, in the picture A, the clinical crown is longer than the anatomical crown because of the gingival recession and exposure of the root surface. Unlike in picture A, picture B shows the anatomical and clinical crown to be of the same dimensions. Tooth morphology is always described in relation to different surfaces. So it is important to familiarize ourselves with the surfaces such as proximal, occlusal or incisal, facial and lingual or palatal. These surfaces will be demonstrated to you via a clinical examination. Examining the oral cavity, the surfaces of the teeth facing the lips and the cheeks are called as the facial surfaces. In the anterior teeth, they are called as the labial surfaces, and in the posterior teeth, they are called as the buccal surfaces. The surfaces of the teeth facing the tongue in the lower arch are called as the lingual surfaces, and the surfaces of the teeth in the maxillary arch facing the palate are called as the palatal surfaces. The surfaces of the teeth adjoining the next teeth are called as the proximal surfaces. For example, if we take the central incisor, the surface of the tooth which is adjoining the next central incisor but closer to the midline is called as a mesial surface, and away from the midline is called as a distal surface. Now lastly, the occlusal and the incisal surface. Between the two arches, when the teeth come in contact, these surfaces in the anterior teeth are called as the incisal surfaces. The same in the posterior teeth are called as the occlusal surfaces. Line angles and point angles form an important aspect in the study of tooth morphology. Line angles are formed by meeting of two surfaces. They are named based on the two surfaces involved as shown in the diagram. Point angle is the point of junction of three surfaces. The names of these angles are derived from the three surfaces involved as shown. Moving on to some of the landmarks involved in dental anatomy. First, the elevations. Cusp is an elevation or a mount on the crown portion of a tooth making up the divisional part of the occlusal surface of posterior teeth. Cingulum is a lingual lobe of an anterior tooth and makes up the bulk of the cervical third of the lingual surface. Ridge is any linear elevation located on the surface of the tooth and is named according to the location. For instance, marginal ridges are rounded borders of enamel that form the mesial and distal margins of the occlusal surface of molars and premolars, and the mesial and distal margins of the lingual surfaces of incisors and canines. Triangular ridges. The ridges descending from the tips of the cusps of molars and premolars towards the central part of the occlusal surface are termed as triangular ridges. Transverse ridge. It is a union of two triangular ridges transversely crossing the surface of a posterior tooth. Oblique ridge. A ridge obliquely crossing the occlusal surfaces of maxillary molars and formed by the union of triangular ridge of the distobuccal cusp and distal cusp ridge of mesiolingual cusp. Next, the depressions. Fossa. Fossa is an irregular depression or concavity on the tooth surface. The lingual fossa. On the lingual surfaces of incisors, we see this fossa. Central fossa. They are on the occlusal surfaces of molars formed by the convergence of ridges at the central point in the bottom of the depression where a junction of grooves occur. Triangular fossae. found on the occlusal surfaces of premolars and molars, mesial or distal to the marginal ridges. Sulcus along ridges and the cusps. Developmental groove. It is a shallow groove or line between the primary parts of the crown or root. Example, buccal groove, lingual groove. Supplemental grooves. Less distinct, shallow or linear depression on the surface of the tooth, supplemental to the main developmental groove. Pits, small pinpoint depressions located at the junction of developmental grooves are called pits. Example, the central pit in the central fossa. While studying dental morphology, it is important to divide the tooth into thirds. Both the crown as well as the root of a tooth is divided into thirds in an horizontal as well as vertical direction. When you look at this diagram of this maxillary central incisor, it is divided by two horizontal lines into three thirds. That is the incisal third, the middle third and the cervical third. Similarly, the root is divided into cervical third, middle and the apical third. In a vertical direction, we can divide it into mesial third, middle third and distal third. When we look at the proximal aspect, the vertical lines divide them into labial third, middle third and the lingual third. In the molar teeth or posterior teeth, similarly, we can divide it into cervical, middle and occlusal in a horizontal direction, distal, middle and mesial in vertical direction. The roots are similarly divided into cervical, middle and apical thirds. The proximal aspect are termed as buccal third, middle third and lingual thirds. These divisions are important in knowing the crest of curvature and the various curvatures of the teeth. Moving on to the anatomic features of the teeth, which help in maintaining their positions in the arch and protect tissues during mastication, we consider the contours, contacts and embrasures. The height of contour or the crest of curvature is the greatest amount of curve or greatest convexity. In this diagram showing the labial surface of maxillary central incisor, the crest of curvature or the greatest convexity on the mesial surface is a point where the mesial surface contacts the scale. So this maximum bulge which is touching the scale is in the incisal third. So now we know that the crest of curvature of height of contour is in the incisal third. Similarly, on the distal aspect, the greatest curvature is at the junction of incisal and middle one-third. Moving on to the proximal aspect, we can see that the crest of curvature lies in the cervical one-third on the labial aspect. Similarly, on the lingual aspect, the crest of curvature again is seen on the cervical one-third. Contact area, the region of mesial or distal surface of a tooth that touches the adjacent tooth in the same arch is called as contact area. An embrasure refers to a V-shaped space between the proximal surfaces of two adjoining teeth in contact. This will be demonstrated via a clinical demonstration. In this clinical examination, we can see the two central incisors contacting in the incisal third, that forms a contact area. Similarly, the contact area between central and lateral, lateral and canine, canine and premolar and so forth. The V-shaped spaces cervical to the contact area and incisal to the contact area are the embrasures. These V-shaped spaces cervically as well as on the incisal to the contact areas are the embrasures. There are various methods of learning dental anatomy. It can be done through the study of natural teeth, models, carving on plaster blocks and on wax blocks. The following video shows a preparation of natural tooth to be used for further studies. Using protective gloves and a mask, tooth specimens should be scraped clean with a knife. Soaking for several hours in hydrogen peroxide before scraping is helpful. Once the extracted tooth specimen is cleaned this way, it can be further stored in formalin. Thus, cleaned teeth can be further stored in 10% formalin for further use. With this basic knowledge of dental anatomy, let's now embark on the next step in learning dental anatomy using wax carving as a method of learning. For the wax carving purpose, we require the following armamentarium. Lecron carver, which is the main instrument needed in wax carving. Natural tooth, if possible, acquire a natural tooth. Wax blocks, divider, scale, polishing cloth, a copy of the drawing of the tooth to be carved, copy of the measurements of the tooth to be carved, and finally the Macintosh sheet. Instrument of choice for carving in wax blocks. It has handle, the parts of the Lecron carver are a handle, shank and blade. Blade has two surfaces. One is a curved sharp edge and the other is a straight blunt edge. Both meet at a pointed tip. See that the tip is not blunt but sharp. Both the sides of the carver are used for wax carving purposes. The opposite end, which is scalloped, is used in making fossae and other depressions on the tooth surfaces. It is important to have a sharp Lecron carver because it provides for stability, control, efficiency of carving, and using less pressure, the carving can be smoothly done with ease. To check for the sharpness, pass the carver on a wax block. See that the shaves of the wax come out evenly. Grasps, one is the palm and thumb grasp. This is used mainly for gross carving purposes, as shown, demonstrated here. The thumb supports the wax block. The handle of the carver is held within the palm and the blade runs smoothly over the wax. The next is the modified pen grasp. The first three fingers, that is the thumb, the index finger and the middle finger, holds the Lecron carver. The middle finger helps in supporting and controlling the blade movement. Now as you see, the ring finger is used in stabilizing the block. So with the help of these four fingers, the Lecron carver is used, and this grasp is called as a modified pen grasp. This is the main type of grasp which we'll be using throughout carving purposes. The divider and scale is used to transfer the measurements onto the wax block after measuring it on the metal scale. We would like you to go through the Wheeler's Dental Anatomy, Physiology and Occlusion textbook thoroughly before starting the carving procedure. With this, we come to the end of the basics of dental anatomy and hope we have achieved the objectives of this session and you are ready to proceed to the actual carving exercise. Thank you.